The pie is so big in the United States that in order for you to get big pieces of the pie, you have to get along with your competitors and even join with them.
Developers are always the prettiest girl at the dance, right? That everybody wants to talk to the developer.
Companies that do not start integrating AI will have a competitive disadvantage in the market. I'm just not talking about only development. I'm talking about overall industry. As developers, everything comes down into time and money. You want to control those two crucial aspects of a project. And in order for you to do that, I believe organization is key. And what I mean about that is when you verbally say something and you guys agree upon, write it down and record it, because it will come back to you. A year, 2 or 3 years, it will come back to you. You have to get that evidence, because if not, they want to take money out of your pocket. You know how that goes.
And you've been in the business actually for a year at this point. You've already seen probably some of your note-taking come into play, where you've written down or emailed someone, hey, we talked about this, and then you can search your email. And if you're organized, you can find that email. If you're not organized, it might be lost forever. One time when I was at NRI, we had gotten all the way through, we were opening, and we had sat down with all the different partners and our investment committee, and we were like, okay, this, I forget exactly what the decision was, but we had an important decision where we're like, we know that we talked about it. We went over it for an hour, at least like just as one question. And I was like so sure that I knew what the answer was. Or I was telling everyone in the meeting room, hey, the answer is this. And as soon as I was done with that meeting, because it was a big, important decision that we had already made, but we're now following through on, I went back to my computer, looked up what it was in like 30 seconds. I ran back in the room and had to tell everyone, hey, it was the opposite. Like we did discuss everything exactly how I said, but our decision was the exact opposite way.
That's funny, yeah. No, and apart from that, that's one aspect of it, recording every time that you agree upon something, but then you have to log everything. You have to have a log of the changes you're doing to the design. You have to do the logs for manpower, right? How much manpower you're doing. You have to log how the schedule is going. You have to log how you're managing the money. Lessons learned to not commit the same mistake. Everything is about logging every single aspect of the things that you're doing in development for you to have record, because there's so much information coming at you at once that it's impossible for your brain to keep all that storage of things coming.
And I think that so two different things. One, with the logging, part of what you guys are doing, logging all of those different things. So of course there's requests for information, right? RFIs, one type of a log where the GC or one of the subs has a question, but there are lots of different logs that will come up that are pretty standard in development and construction. But then there are other things, like you mentioned, the manpower log. You might not have the opportunity to audit those things because luckily in your case, that big of a project, you've actually, I'm assuming you have something that's in your GC agreement that gives you that. There are a lot of GC agreements out there that you're not going to have even the right to question it. It's called means and methods.
Means and methods.
So the general contractor has, within certain bounds, under the scope of the contract, they have the authority to act with the means and the methods, and you don't really get to push too much if it's not within your scope as the owner.
Correct.
And the second thing that you mentioned was just how much information is getting thrown at you all at one time. And I think this is one of the places where AI is going to make a huge impact.
You already started.
Right. I've already started on my information collection process because I was looking at AI back in like 2017, and I was working with the attorneys at Greenberg Traurig, and I was sending them and some of our other attorneys like opportunities that I saw where the technology was evolving. And every time there would be like a new thing, I would send it out to them and say, hey, this thing is really interesting, because me coming in as a recent law school graduate and new into the development world, and I've always been interested in technology. I was just looking at all of these different things and thinking, like, the biggest example is that all the law schools switched over to computer-based systems. They used to have these huge law libraries where you'd have to flip through the book, try to find the answers. And I can't imagine not using the Control F find feature in a contract. It's crazy that before my time, people would have to go and find a book, look at the indexes, do all kinds of different things. Now we're evolving again where it's natural language based, where I can just type or say what my question is. As long as you have that documentation available to you, you're able to pull those things up. So I was looking at that from a legal standpoint, looking at the issues that I was like, man, I've got so much to do. How can I save time? And I was keeping all of these records for the company, mostly on the legal side, looking at the opportunities. But now that AI has really become all encompassing for business opportunities, all of this data, all of the logs, all of the estimates, all of everything is becoming accessible for us if we're able to set up the systems in the right way.
And that's a great point for me, the industry of AI. And we were discussing it last week when you showed me what you were incorporating in your system, the bridge, right? So I really do believe that companies that do not start integrating AI will have a competitive disadvantage in the market. I'm just not talking about only development. I'm talking about overall industry. AI is incredibly good for everything, right? And if you're able to be at the edge of the amount of AI that you can incorporate in your specific area, you will have competitive advantage for sure. Many companies are missing that opportunity. And that's always the thing that I try to do in our group back in Central America, because we live in a bubble where we do great things with what we have, but we maintain it like that. We stop exploring and look up and see what else is out there.
But you described it to me as taking the blinders off.
Taking the blinders off.
The Central
correct.
American blinders that you feel like you have, and seeing the opportunities.
Exactly. So you get out of that comfort zone. It takes sacrifice. It takes unknown destinations. You really don't know where you're going sometimes, but it takes you out of your comfort zone to explore new things always. You take small risks, but those small risks, even though if they don't go as planned, it will show you something. You're going to learn something. Of course, you're going to learn it.
And with AI in particular, the risk that you're taking to experiment is so small. For me, one of the biggest things that I always wanted to do that the technology wasn't available for me to do, or at least I wasn't good enough with, I don't write code. Like, I know enough to figure things out, but I wasn't writing code about how to review the legal agreements. But when you're in the middle of a negotiation, you've got maybe 10 different rounds of a document. So I'll comment on it. My attorneys comment on it. The other person comments on it. Their attorneys comment on it. One of your partners comments on it. So now you've got 5 different versions of this document that's making its way around. And it's like, how are you keeping track of each person's thing all the time?
Yeah.
And so who said what? And then to your point, was this months ago that this happened? So that was like the first big thing that I wanted to solve with my own setup and my own system. And so I used this was literally like the beginning of February, end of January was when I started playing with the Claude Code setup and figuring out, how do I make my dreams of contract review a reality, right? And so I was able to do that in the matter of maybe 3 hours. And normally it would take me 8 hours. And I always tell Joe and anyone that I'm talking to, trying to teach people how to review larger legal agreements, you have to spend at least 8 hours sitting down, reading every single word of the contract. And I still believe that's true. I think that you do need that as one of the steps in your process. Maybe the first step, maybe the second, but having the AI to leverage to see that history of the back and forth between the people is really helpful to have those insights when you're going through and doing your manual review of it. Because it's still, you have to put your mind and your own creativity to work to figure out what do you want in the contract, because you have so many different options. But that opportunity only existed a couple of months ago. And now for me, it's a reality, right? Like I built it, it's working. I've got other different types of tools that I'm building. Right now, I just implemented a whole new setup this morning for integrating all of my email and calendar and things like that. But there are just so many different types of opportunities that you can spend a little bit of time on and you get a huge payout. It's like an investment, right? You can risk a little bit and you earn a lot.
And coming back to what we were talking about, how fast you're able to finish a task, then AI will just expedite every task that you are able to do. AI is a tool, will not make the job for you, but of course it will help you do the tedious and forensics work that you have to do in order for you to complete a task. And it saves you time and you're able to move faster than other people.
One of the big things that I rely on all of my professionals for, whether it's legal or accounting or architects or whoever, and the reason I hire the best of the best and I'm willing to pay more for those types of professionals is not only the work and the job that they're doing in particular, but the experience that they have working with other high-level professionals. So if I'm working with an accountant that has worked with all of the top developers, they're going to understand all of the tricks that all of the other developers are doing and be able to share that knowledge with me.
Exactly.
Same thing on the legal side. And having that type of information from real live professionals and now also from AI is amazing, right? Because it lets you highlight the different types of opportunities and spot things that you wouldn't be able to do on your own, especially in your case, you're only into the job for a year. You're probably learning from so many different people on the job. And at the same time, probably asking AI, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of questions every month.
Yes. And that's the journey that we'll keep every day. We keep learning and choosing that hard path where we're going to receive more opportunities for us to grow internally. And then by consequence, see the fruits of our labor.
And I didn't realize that it had been a full year that you were working at Two Roads, and time flies, especially when you're in the thick of it.
Exactly.
But how far along are you guys right now? Which stage of construction are you actively working on?
So we topped off at the beginning of January, so as projected. But now the focus is on all the details of the things that we didn't catch or the GC didn't catch, the interiors, you know how that goes.
I have an interesting story about details that you can't really fix exactly. Was on our project in Coral Gables that we were working on. We had this is a unique thing for South Florida as opposed to like other places in the country or the world, is we have everything's made of concrete. And so you're pouring concrete and you're pouring more and more concrete as you go up all these different floors. And you have holes that are designed in the concrete.
The provisions, yes.
And so
the sleeves.
Yeah, so you designed a hole, and when you're going to pour the concrete, you're just like out in space. There's nothing there at first. You have to build
the platform.
You have to build the platform, make the holes, figure out where everything's gonna go. And on our project, some of the holes were 6 inches or a foot off to the side. And these were where the lights were supposed to go over the top of the counters. And so the kitchen counters were going to have a light fixture that was like off
Exactly.
by 6, 8 inches. It's like, what are we going to do? We're not going to
That's
cut a
huge,
new hole.
yeah.
There's a massive problem that we had to figure out. And we didn't realize that until we were getting pretty far into the...
When you guys were putting the finishes.
It wasn't when we were...
That's crazy.
Not all the way when we were getting the finishes, but still, like, you can't go back and redo the pour after it's all done. You can, but it's a massive amount of work. We found an easier solution. We just picked a different light fixture that had a longer base to it that would cover the hole and allow us to move the wires over so we could drop it down exactly over the center of the countertop. So no one would ever know this unless you were on the job site.
Exactly, no, for sure. And that's everyday life.
It's a solution.
Exactly.
You find a solution. We probably even saved money because we bought a cheaper light fixture that made
rather than doing X-ray and cutting other
doing an X-ray and
holes.
cutting
Exactly, yeah.
There was no way we were going to do that.
Yes. And that's always the case. In development, you're always going to have surprises. You have to adapt, map out the problem, and find the best way to tackle those problems, being cost efficient and time efficient. So I think that's a everyday thing that always we're going to have as developers.
This reminds me of one time when we very first started talking, how 2 years ago when we first met, was we were talking about going to networking events and how you said that the developers are always the prettiest girl at the dance, right? That everybody wants to talk to the developer. I think in large part because they're the ones driving the hiring decision for all the contractors. And what you usually end up seeing is developers huddled off in a corner somewhere, just talking to each other, telling stories like this about all the things that went wrong.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's so true.
And have you started to experience that, or have you even really had a chance to go networking very much since getting your full-time development job?
Yes. At this point, I am where I want to be, but networking, it's always beneficial in everything, not only for the development side of things, but also to expand your network, meet new people. The only way you're able to find out what's going on with the world, with the new industries, is by meeting people and genuinely wanting to meet people, right? That's my goal on the network events, right? It's not just for interests or things like that. It's like genuinely try to know people and what they're doing and find good people that are aligned with the same path that you want. If you find those connections where you can build a good group where everyone in their path is trying to achieve things, I believe you have a great group that will keep on pushing you. And from the network events, I've made relationships not only for work, but also in life. And I love it. I love it because you get to know new people, new cultures, new opportunities.
And I think that's where we met, was at a networking event. I think one of the things, and maybe this is more unique to Miami or maybe not, some people use networking events as excuses to party when they first go out.
Yeah, exactly.
But you should be going for a purpose. And even people who are older, have been in the industry a long time, there's a big joke about all of the like senior leaders when they go to ICSC out in Vegas, like that, about how it's just a big party.
Yeah.
A lot of deals do get done, but it's interesting the approach that different people will take when they're at an event like that, where it's either about meeting people, maybe it's about learning new tools and technology, or maybe it's about partying.
Yes, and party is a great source of information of the who you're dealing with. You want to be able to, like, with the partners that you get or the people that you're hanging around, you want to know the who you're dealing with. Partying is great to know someone, you know.
My dad has some Russian friends that when he would go with some of them to a restaurant or wherever, that some of the other guys, he would show up with one of his friends, and some of the other guys would be like, oh, we don't trust him. He doesn't drink. What's going on? And they would have to vouch for him.
Oh, they had to
He's like,
vouch
no,
for
I've
him.
known
Yeah,
him. He's good. Don't worry.
that's funny. That's funny.
So one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was something that I've had to learn a lot about through knowing you and your family, with all of the ways that we interact cross-culturally. Your family's from Honduras, and being in Miami, I never thought I was going to be working with a family from Honduras. I thought when I was in California that was going to be the case. But growing up, and even when I was in undergrad, I didn't really grasp what it meant and the way that different cultures work together. And so maybe you being in kind of both sides and seeing both sides like really deeply, you can help enlighten me and
Exactly.
everyone about how do people think on both sides of the border.
So I've realized this by taking that step that we discussed of me. Everything started with me trying to have that vision of expanding the family group and not start just looking at where we at, but also look at other places where there are more opportunities. And what I realized is that my time being, I was raised in Honduras, right? 18 years. And the way of how people work, right? Old school, relationship wise, culture wise, principles, values, as always, but they were very close to each other and they just did business together, or they did not, or typically it was more everybody very conservative and just sticking to what they were given and just expanding it where they were at, which is, so that's what I see in the culture of Honduran. And just to give a little bit of history, Honduran has a lot of Arabic roots, right? From my dad's side, first generation came from Bethlehem to Honduras, and many families did the same thing. And there's a huge influence of Arabics where we do work together, we go to meetings together, we go to social events together, but it's a very close group, which is amazing. You were raised with people that have the same affinity as you, but on the work side, I always saw that they were very close-minded, right? When I took the jump and I told my family that I wanted to go to the United States, find new opportunities, stay here, and bring them to the group for us to consider and expand, I started to meet new cultures, right? American culture, your culture. And I started to see that in some kind of way it was similar, but they were more open to things. And the most beautiful thing that I saw in the United States is that competition doesn't really exist, in the sense of I see competitors talking to each other and making business together to go to the next level and grow.
I think a lot of gurus and people call that the abundance mindset.
The abundance mindset, yes. I truly believe it's true. You build a mastermind, but competitors need each other in order for them to grow and together get to the next level.
Because you see how big the pie is.
Exactly.
Right? And in Honduras, you only have so many people, or even most of Central America, there's only so many people that you have an opportunity to sell to do business with. And so I think it's a little bit of the way that things just naturally are. And then, like you said, the history and all the rest of it that goes with it.
And that's the biggest thing that I saw, right, in Honduras. But like you said, the analogy of the pie, right? How much pie do we have, right, to eat is in Honduras is a small pie compared to the other places like this one. The pie is so big in United States that in order for you to get big pieces of the pie, you have to get along with your competitors and even join with them in order for you, because there's enough food to eat. If you go to Honduras, the pie is so small that people tend to be more lone soldiers and trying to do their own things because they have a fear of getting opportunities stolen or that somebody moves faster than them, which I understand. That's
Yeah.
how it goes, you know?
Yeah, I think one of the big pieces for me is not obviously I don't have the same experience as you do with the size of the pie, the growth of the different families over different generations. But I think one of the things I've seen that's really struck me that's different is how close knit everyone is. And I think a big piece of that is the visibility that you have into people's backgrounds, the way the law works, the different ways that you can actually do business together. In Honduras, I imagine that the legal system is not exactly the same. And so that's going to create a different type of a business culture, a different business environment. And there's a lot of trust that you have to have
Exactly.
for you to be able to work with people. And so that by necessity means you're going to work with people that you know, that people that can vouch for them. Whereas here, you can actually look into people's backgrounds. You can find a lot more information that's like freely available, and you can contract around a lot of the problems. Even if you know that there might be a problem, you can put in place strong legal protections and keep yourself in a position of strength.
And you touched a very important point, right? And how we call it is non-market forces and market force. And what is that in Honduras, for example, non-market force is way above market force. And what I mean by that is non-market force are the things that you're not able to control, like politics. They're the ones that give the permits. They're the ones that move the country to wherever they want. And in Honduras, that's the thing that we struggle the most. Non-market force, the things that we cannot control, is the one leading, right? And then you have market force, which is the things that you're able to control, like the effort you put into the companies.
And like you said, solving the problems on site, being organized, you can do all of that all day long. If you can't control that outside political force, where's your business?
Exactly. And this is the beauty of the United States that I saw as well, right? Non-market force, it's all the way to the bottom, and market force is all the way to the top. And what I mean by that in one single phrase is the rules are the same for everyone, right? The effort that you give, the amount of work you put into your business will become fruitful here. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm not just trying to open the eyes of my family group, which they have already done it. We're already in place with investments and also with development, right? And I'm trying to also bring other families that haven't seen that part of the world and enlighten them a little bit of what you can see and the opportunities you can have here in order for them to grow. Because the who, which are the families that have known forever, have affinity to each other. What better thing to do to work with people that you already know and that your first generations already had a past, and then enlightening them and bringing them here to see new opportunities and grow together. It's one of the best things that can happen.
Yeah. To sum it up for me, the way I'm thinking of it is that you guys have such a long shared history, and your plan and your goal right now is to have a long shared future.
Exactly. With those family groups, with the people that we were raised with, if we're able to create a mastermind and bring them to the opportunities here where there's abundance of opportunity and food to eat, that you're able to actually join together in order for you to go to the next level, that's the goal.